Title: The Great Emu War 1932, Hilarious and Unbelievable Battle. Introduction. The vast and rugged landscapes of Western Australia, an unusual war took place in 1932. Unlike traditional conflicts between nations, this battle was fought between the Australian government and an unlikely adversary, the Emus. Yes, you read that right. The Great Emu War remains one of history's most bizarre and comical military failures. Despite deploying soldiers armed with machine guns, the humans were outmaneuvered by these large, flightless birds, leading to a humiliating defeat for the Australian army. But how did such a peculiar war begin? Why did the government resort to military action against birds? And most importantly, how did the emus manage to win? Let's dive deep into this fascinating and absurd chapter of history. The background: Australia after World War. To understand the origins of the Great Emu War, we must first look at the events that led to it. After World War I ended in 1918, many Australian soldiers returned home to find that their nation was facing economic hardships. In an attempt to support these veterans, the Australian government introduced a scheme to provide them with farmland in Western Australia. Thousands of ex-soldiers were granted land under the Soldier Settlement Scheme, with the hope that they would contribute to Australia's wheat production. However, farming in the harsh Australian outback proved to be much more challenging than expected. The region was dry, the soil was tough, and the settlers lacked proper experience in large-scale agriculture. Things only got worse in the early 1930s when the Great Depression hit. Wheat prices plummeted, leaving farmers in financial distress. Despite government promises of subsidies, little financial aid was actually provided. With mounting debts and failing crops, the struggling farmers found themselves facing yet another unexpected challenge: an invasion of emus. The emu invasion, a feathered menace, Emus, native to Australia, are large flightless birds that can grow up to 6 feet tall and run at speeds of up to 50 kilometers per hour, 30 mph. These birds migrate seasonally in search of food and water, and in 1932, approximately 20,000 of them found their way into the farmlands of Western Australia. The presence of so many emus quickly turned into a disaster for the struggling farmers. The birds feasted on wheat fields, trampled crops, and damaged fences, allowing rabbits to enter and cause further destruction. The situation became dire, and desperate farmers called for government intervention. The government's response, calling in the military. Faced with the growing agricultural crisis, the Australian government decided to take extreme measures. Instead of finding alternative solutions, they opted for military action. The idea was simple: if the emus were causing destruction, the army would eliminate them. In November 1932, Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery was assigned to lead the operation. He was given 2 soldiers, 2 Lewis machine guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The plan was to hunt down the emus and put an end to their destruction. The first battle, chaos and confusion. On November 2, 1932, the soldiers arrived in Western Australia, ready to engage in battle. The first attempt took place near the town of Campion, where they encountered a flock of 50 emus. The soldiers opened fire, but to their surprise, the birds scattered and ran in all directions. Due to the emus' speed and unpredictable movements, very few were hit. The soldiers tried again, but the birds quickly adapted, making it nearly impossible to shoot them down. Over the next few days, the troops attempted different strategies. At one point, they decided to set up an ambush near a waterhole, hoping to shoot the emus in large numbers. However, the emus proved to be smarter than expected. They avoided the trap and ran away before the soldiers could get a clear shot. The second attempt, mounted machine guns. Determined to achieve success, Major Meredith decided to mount one of the machine guns on a truck, hoping to chase the emus down at high speed. However, this plan also failed miserably. The rough terrain made it impossible to aim accurately, and the truck struggled to keep up with the agile birds. To make matters worse, the machine gun overheated, rendering it useless. The humiliating defeat. After weeks of trying and failing, it became clear that the emus had won. Despite using thousands of rounds of ammunition, the soldiers had managed to kill only about 1,000 emus, while the remaining 19,000 continued to roam freely. Major Meredith later admitted, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world." By early December 1932, the government decided to withdraw the troops. The Great Emu War had ended in a humiliating loss for the Australian military, and the emus emerged victorious. The aftermath, lessons learned. The failure of the Great Emu War led to intense criticism of the government's decision-making. Newspapers mocked the military's defeat, and people worldwide found humor in the idea of soldiers losing a battle against birds. Eventually, farmers were forced to come up with alternative solutions, such as building better fences to keep the emus out. In later years, the government introduced a bounty system that rewarded individuals for hunting emus, which proved to be a more effective method of control. Interestingly, emus are now a protected species under Australian law, and their population remains stable. Today, the Great Emu War serves as a hilarious yet thought-provoking reminder of the unpredictability of nature and the importance of strategic planning. Conclusion: the Great Emu War of 1932 remains one of history's most bizarre and amusing military encounters. What started as an attempt to control a bird population turned into a humiliating defeat for the Australian government. Despite having superior weaponry, the humans were outmatched by the sheer resilience and adaptability of the emus. This story has since become a legendary tale of military failure, proving that sometimes even the best-laid plans can be undone by nature itself. So, the next time you hear about great military battles, remember that in 1932, Australia waged war against emus, and the emus won. Even today, this war is recounted as one of history's strangest events. It serves as a humorous reminder that underestimating nature can lead to surprising consequences. Whether seen as a cautionary tale or simply a ridiculous episode, the Great Emu War remains an unforgettable chapter in Australia's history.